The scent of oil and burnt rubber permeated the garage of Rourke's Resurrections. Jackson Rourke, 42, moved as he tightened the final bolt on a 1967 Mustang's transmission. His calloused hands, stained with the day's work, told stories of countless hours spent breathing life back into machines others had abandoned. "Come on, baby," he muttered, giving the wrench one final turn. The satisfying click brought a slight grin to his face. This wasn't just work for Jax, it was artistry. Each vehicle that rolled into his shop was a challenge, a puzzle waiting to be solved. The radio in the corner crackled with classic rock, providing a rhythm to his movements as he cleaned his tools. His workspace was immaculate. Each instrument had its place, each part cataloged. This order wasn't just about efficiency. It was about control, about knowing exactly where everything stood. "Mr. Rourke?" A young apprentice, Tommy, appeared at the garage entrance. "That Bentley guy is here again. Says he needs to speak with you personally." Jax wiped his hands on a shop rack. "Tell him I'll be there in 5. He knew the type, wealthy clients who thought their money bought them special treatment. He treated them all the same, with professional courtesy and unwavering standards. The sound of expensive heels clicking against concrete interrupted his thoughts. Corinne Sterling Rourke stood in the doorway, her tailored power suit a stark contrast to the industrial setting. At 40, she remained striking, her beauty as calculated as her career moves. "Jackson," she said, her voice sharp enough to cut steel. "We need to talk. Now." He recognized that tone. It had become increasingly frequent over their 20 years of marriage. "I'm with a client, Corinne. The client can wait." Her perfectly manicured nails drummed against her designer handbag. "This is important." Jax turned to face her fully, noting the cold determination in her eyes. "Everything's important with you lately. Give me 15 minutes to wrap up with the Bentley owner." "No." The word came out like a whip crack. "I've waited long enough." Tommy shifted uncomfortably near the office door, sensing the tension. Jax nodded to him. "Take care of Mr. Harrison for me. Tell him I'll call him personally this evening." As the apprentice hurried away, Jax studied his wife. Something was different today. Her posture was rigid, defensive. She'd always carried herself with confidence, but this was something else entirely. "What couldn't wait, Corinne?" She laughed, a harsh, brittle sound. "You really don't get it, do you? All these years, and you're still the same grease monkey I married. No ambition, no vision, just this." She gestured dismissively at the garage. "This grease monkey provided pretty well for us," Jax replied, his voice level but with an edge of steel beneath it. "Or have you forgotten who funded your MBA?" "Oh, please." Corinne rolled her eyes. "You think a comfortable middle-class life is enough? While I'm out there working with real professionals, real success stories, you're here playing with your toys." The tension in the air thickened. Jax set down his wrench with deliberate care. "Say what you came to say, Corinne. I'm leaving you." She pulled a thick envelope from her bag. "My lawyer drew up the papers. I want this done quickly and quietly." Jax didn't reach for the envelope. "Leaving me for what? Or should I say for whom?" A cruel smile played across her lips. "Caden Thorne. You remember him? The CEO I've been working with on the merger? He's everything you're not. Successful, ambitious, powerful. A real man." "A real man," Jax repeated, his voice dangerously quiet. "And our son? Ethan's coming with me, of course. Caden's already arranged for him to transfer to Beverly Hills High. He needs to be around success, Jackson, not whatever this is." As if on cue, Ethan appeared behind his mother. At 16, he had his father's height but his mother's features, and apparently, her newfound disdain. "Hey, Dad," Ethan said, not quite meeting his father's eyes. "Mom's right. I can't stay here anymore. It's embarrassing, you know? All my friends' parents are doctors, lawyers, executives. And my dad? He fixes cars." Jax felt something inside him harden, like molten steel being quenched. "I see. And you've both made up your minds about this?" "It's done, Jackson," Corinne declared. "The movers have already packed our things. Sign the papers, and we can all move on with our lives." "Just like that? 20 years of marriage, and you don't think I deserve more than a 5-minute conversation in my garage?" Corinne's laugh was sharp and dismissive. What's there to discuss? You're a nobody, Jackson. A skilled mechanic, sure, but still just a mechanic. Caden makes more in a day than you do in a year. He has connections, influence, real power. What can you possibly offer to compete with that? And you, Ethan? Jax turned to his son. This is what you want? Ethan shrugged, the gesture painfully adolescent. Come on, Dad. Look at this place. Look at yourself. Mom's new house has a pool, a tennis court, and a view of the entire city. Caden's got 3 Ferraris. What do you have? A bunch of other people's broken-down cars? The words hung in the air like toxic fumes. Jack stood perfectly still, his face unreadable. When he spoke, his voice was calm, controlled, and absolutely terrifying. Get out. The papers, Corinne started. I said get out. Each word was precisely enunciated, carved from ice. You'll hear from my lawyer. Don't be difficult about this, Jackson, Corinne warned. You can't win. You don't have the resources, the connection. Get out of my garage. The quiet menace in his voice finally penetrated their arrogance. Corinne took an involuntary step back. Come on, Ethan, she said, turning on her heel. Let your father wallow in his mediocrity. We have a new life waiting. They left without looking back, the sound of their footsteps fading into silence. Jack stood motionless in his garage, surrounded by the tools and machines that had defined his life. The radio continued to play, an upbeat song that seemed to mock the moment. He walked to his office with measured steps, closed the door, and sat at his desk. His computer hummed softly as he logged into an account he hadn't accessed in years. The numbers on the screen made him smile. Not a pleasant smile, but one that would have made Corinne and Ethan rethink their words had they seen it. Jax picked up his phone and dialed a number from memory. Cade? It's Jackson. Remember those bitcoins you convinced me to buy back in 2010? I think it's time to cash them in. And Cade? Let's keep this between us for now. He ended the call and sat back in his chair, plans already forming in his mind. They thought him weak, mediocre, a simple mechanic. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. The satisfaction of revenge would come later. For now, there was work to be done. And if there was one thing Jackson Rourke knew, it was how to work. Chapter 2. The Quiet Fury. The morning after his world imploded, Jackson Rourke sat in his office, scrolling through his contact list. His fingers stopped at a name, Beatrix B. Hayes. She had a reputation for being the most ruthless divorce attorney in the state, a woman who didn't just win cases, she destroyed opponents. Rourke's resurrections, his secretary answered the phone outside. Yes, Miss Hayes. Mr. Rourke is expecting you. B. Hayes swept into his office 10 minutes later, a force of nature in a charcoal suit. At 55, she carried herself with the confidence of someone who had seen every dirty trick in the book and invented a few of her own. Jackson Rourke, she said, setting her briefcase on his desk. I've heard interesting things about your situation. Very interesting things. Have a seat, Miss Hayes. Jax gestured to the chair across from him. I assume news travels fast in certain circles. Please call me B. She sat, studying him with sharp eyes. And yes, when Corinne Sterling Rourke moves in with Caden Thorne, people talk. The question is, what are you going to do about it? I want them destroyed. The words came out matter of fact, devoid of emotion. Not just divorced. Not just separated. Destroyed. BEA's eyebrows rose slightly. Strong words. Most men in your position are angry, emotional. You seem calculated. I am. Jax leaned forward. I want this handled today. No delays, no negotiations, no mercy. Whatever it costs. Money isn't the issue here, Jackson, B said, opening her briefcase. The question is whether you're prepared for what this means. Revenge sounds sweet until you're in the thick of it. I'm not interested in revenge, B. Jax's voice remained steady. I'm interested in justice. They think I'm nothing? Fine. Let's show them exactly what nothing looks like. B pulled out a stack of papers. Tell me everything. And I mean everything. Any detail you leave out is a weapon they can use against us. For the next hour, Jax laid out the story. His marriage to Corinne, their early struggles, his support of her career, their son Ethan's growing disdain for his father's profession. He spoke without anger, without pain, just cold, hard facts. The boy concerns me, B said, making notes. 16 is old enough to make his own decisions in the eyes of the court. If he chooses to live with his mother, let him. Jax's response was immediate. He made his choice clear enough yesterday. You're taking this remarkably well. No, B, I'm not taking this well at all. Jax stood and walked to the window overlooking his garage. I'm taking this exactly as it needs to be taken. They want to treat me like I'm beneath them? Fine. Let's see how that works out for them. What aren't you telling me, Jackson? BEA's instincts, honed over decades of high-stakes divorces, were tingling. There's something else in play here. Jax turned back to her, a slight smile on his face. Have you ever heard of Bitcoin, B? The cryptocurrency? Of course. It's been in the news. Her voice trailed off as understanding dawned. How many? 15,000. Bought for next to nothing in 2010. Current value? He paused. Just over $900 million. BEA's pin stopped moving. For the first time in years, she was genuinely shocked. Does Corinne know? No one knows except my financial advisor, and now you. Jax returned to his seat. I want the divorce finalized before they find out. I want them to think they've won, that they've left the poor mechanic in their dust. Then we'll see who's beneath whom. This changes everything, B said, her mind already racing through possibilities. We can expedite the divorce, have it done within days. Corinne's overconfidence works in our favor. She'll want it done quickly, thinking you have nothing worth fighting for. Exactly. Jax nodded. And once it's final? Once it's final, what you do with your assets is your business. BEA's smile was predatory. Though I'd love to see their faces when they realize what they've walked away from. Oh, they'll see much more than that. Jax's voice hardened. They'll see exactly what a simple mechanic is capable of. B began preparing the paperwork, her experienced hands moving swiftly. I'll have these ready within the hour. But Jackson? She looked up at him. Be careful. Revenge is a dangerous game, especially with this much money involved. I don't play games, B. Jax's eyes were cold. I fix things. Right now, what needs fixing is the mistaken impression that I can be discarded like a broken part. They wanted to break me? They've just unleashed something far worse. The rest of the day passed in a blur of signatures and legal proceedings. By sunset, the divorce was in motion, fast-tracked by Corinne's own eagerness to be free. Jax worked in his garage, the rhythmic sound of tools against metal a counterpoint to his thoughts. His phone buzzed, a text from Cade. Bitcoin account secured. Ready when you are. Jax sent a single word in response. Begin. That night, he sat in his office long after his employees had gone home. On his desk lay an old photograph of him and Corinne on their wedding day. Young, in love, full of dreams. He picked it up, studied it for a moment, then dropped it into the metal trash can beside his desk. A match flared in the darkness. The photograph caught quickly, curling and blackening in the flames. Jax watched it burn, his face illuminated by the small fire, showing no emotion as the last physical reminder of his marriage turned to ash. Chapter 3. The Architect of Ruin. The transformation of Jackson Rourke began with a phone call to Cade O'Connell, his longtime financial advisor and the man who had first suggested the Bitcoin investment years ago. We need to move fast, Jack said into the phone, his voice low and controlled. How quickly can you convert the crypto without raising red flags? Cade's response was immediate. Give me 48 hours. I've got connections at several exchanges. We'll do it in chunks. Spread it out enough to avoid attention. Make it 24. Jax's tone left no room for argument. And Cade? I need absolute discretion. No paper trail leading back to me. Jesus, Jax. Cade's voice cracked slightly. What are you planning? Better you don't know the details. Just make it happen. The next week was a whirlwind of calculated moves. Jax began assembling his team. People he could trust, people with skills he needed, people with their own reasons to want to see the mighty fall. His first major acquisition was subtle but significant. A Beverly Hills architectural firm, struggling but with a solid reputation. He renamed it Jackson Resurrections, a deliberate echo of his garage, a reminder of who he was and what he could do. I want the best, he told the firm's managing partner, Marcus Chin. Money is no object, but I need absolute loyalty and complete secrecy. Marcus, a shrewd businessman who recognized power when he saw it, merely nodded. What's our first project? Jack spread out a map of Beverly Hills on the conference table. This street, all of it, every property, every inch. I want it bought up quietly, through different shell companies. No one connects the purchases to me. That's Caden Thorne Street, Marcus observed carefully. His mansion is right here. He pointed to a spot on the map. I know exactly where his mansion is. Jack's smile didn't reach his eyes. That's the point. The acquisitions proceeded with ruthless efficiency. Property after property was purchased, each through a different corporation, each transaction appearing unrelated to the others. Jax moved like a spider, weaving a web of ownership around his prey. Meanwhile, Caden Thorne and Corinne celebrated their new life, oblivious to the noose tightening around them. They hosted lavish parties, made appearances at exclusive social events, their faces splashed across local society pages. Look at this, Corinne said one morning, showing Caden a magazine spread featuring them at a charity gala. We make such a perfect power couple. Caden's arms snaked around her waist, his designer watch glinting in the morning light. Of course we do. You were wasted on that mechanic. This is where you belong. In his newly acquired office, Jax watched their public displays through different eyes. He had hired a team of private investigators to track their every move, building a comprehensive picture of their daily routines, their habits, their vulnerabilities. Sir, his assistant interrupted his thoughts. The final property on the street has been acquired. You now own everything except the Thorne Mansion. Jax nodded, his fingers drumming against his desk. Perfect. Time for Phase 2. The news broke on a Tuesday morning. Mystery buyer acquires entire Beverly Hills street. The story spread through the wealthy enclave like wildfire, spawning speculation and concern among the elite. In their mansion, Caden nearly choked on his morning coffee as he read the headline. What the hell is this? He demanded, throwing the newspaper across the breakfast table. Corinne picked it up, her face paling as she read. How is this possible? Who would buy an entire street? Some tech billionaire playing games, Caden growled, but there was uncertainty in his voice. He was used to being the most powerful person in any room, used to knowing all the players. This unknown entity threatened that control. At Rourke's Resurrections, the garage, not the architectural firm, Jax worked on a classic Corvette, his hands steady despite the satisfaction coursing through him. His phone buzzed, another text from Cade. All assets secured. Offshore accounts established. You're officially a ghost in the system. Jax allowed himself a small smile. The pieces were falling into place. He had built his foundation carefully, each move calculated for maximum impact. Now it was time to start dismantling their world, brick by carefully laid brick. His team had already begun the next phase, subtle pressure applied through various channels. Building inspectors suddenly found concerns with the Thorne Mansion's permits. Property taxes came under review. Small inconveniences multiplied like bacteria in a petri dish. You're costing them money, be observed during one of their meetings. But more importantly, you're costing them peace of mind. They don't know where to look, who to blame. That's the point, Jax replied, reviewing reports from his investigators. Let them feel what it's like to lose control, to have their world shift under their feet. He paused, picking up a particularly interesting report. Did you see this? Seems Caden's been cutting corners on his building projects. Safety violations, bribes to inspectors. Interesting ammunition. He studied him with a mixture of admiration and concern. You've changed, Jackson. The man I met a week ago was angry but controlled. Now I'm still controlled, Jax interrupted. But I'm not angry anymore. This isn't about anger. This is about justice. They thought they could discard me, treat me like I was nothing. Now they'll learn what nothing feels like. The sun was setting over Beverly Hills as Jax drove home that evening. He passed Caden's mansion, noting the expensive cars in the driveway, the manicured lawns, the illusion of impregnable security. Soon, very soon, that illusion would shatter. His phone rang. It was Ethan. For a moment, Jax considered ignoring it, but he answered on the final ring. Dad. His son's voice was hesitant. I just wanted to. Save it. Jax cut him off, his voice devoid of emotion. You made your choice, Ethan. Live with it. He ended the call, turning off his phone. There would be time for personal matters later. Right now, he had an empire to build and another to destroy. Back in his office, Jax reviewed the latest architectural plans for the properties he'd acquired. Each one would be transformed, rebuilt into something that would cast a shadow over Thorne's mansion, a constant reminder of the power shift taking place. Your father was right, he murmured to himself, remembering old lessons. The best revenge isn't served cold. It's built, piece by piece, until it's too late for your enemies to escape. The first act of Jackson Rourke's transformation was complete. He had laid his foundation, positioned his pieces, and set his trap. Soon, very soon, Caden Thorne and Corinne would learn the true cost of their betrayal. But that would be another chapter, another act in this carefully orchestrated drama of revenge. For now, Jax returned to his garage, to the smell of oil and metal, to the work that had defined him for so long. He picked up a wrench, its weight familiar in his hand. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities for retribution. But tonight, he would work on his cars, finding peace in the precision of his craft, knowing that the real war was just beginning. Chapter 4. The Spider's Web. Jackson Rourke sat in his new office, surrounded by screens displaying Caden Thorne's financial empire. Each monitor showed a different aspect of the man's life: stock prices, business holdings, property investments, social connections. Jax studied them with the same meticulous attention he once gave to engine blueprints. Sir, his assistant's voice came through the intercom. Mr. O'Connell is here. Cade entered, tablet in hand, his usual confident demeanor subdued. Jax, we need to talk about what you're planning. The amount of resources you're mobilizing. Show me, Jax interrupted, gesturing to the tablet. Cade pulled up a series of graphs. You've authorized shorts against all of Caden's major holdings. The timing has to be perfect, or he'll see it coming. He won't. Jax's voice carried absolute certainty. Tell me about the legal team. We've got 20 lawyers working on different angles. Employment violations, safety regulations, tax discrepancies. But Jax. Cade hesitated. This goes beyond revenge. You're talking about destroying a man's entire life's work. Jax turned to face his friend, his eyes cold. He didn't just take my wife, Cade. He took my son. He made them believe I was nothing. Now he'll learn what nothing feels like. The first strike came at dawn. Headlines broke across financial news networks. Whistleblowers reveal systemic fraud at Thorne Enterprises. Anonymous sources detailed years of worker exploitation, safety violations, and financial misconduct. In his Beverly Hills mansion, Caden Thorne spilled coffee across his imported silk robe as he read the reports. This is impossible, he roared, throwing his phone across the room. Who dares? Who dares? Corinne rushed in, her face pale. Caden, what's happening? The phone's been ringing nonstop. Our friends, your business partners. Shut up, Caden snapped. This is your fault. Ever since you left that mechanic. Don't you dare blame me. Corinne's voice rose. I gave up everything for you. And now you might cost me everything in return. Their argument was interrupted by Caden's personal assistant. Sir, the SEC is on line 1. And sir, our stock. It's in free fall. Jax watched the chaos unfold from his command center. He'd hired the best cybersecurity experts money could buy, led by a woman named Sarah Chun, whose fingers flew across keyboards like a virtuoso pianist. They're trying to trace the leaks, Sarah reported. But they're chasing ghosts. Each document came through a different channel. Each whistleblower appears legitimate. They'll never find the connection. Good. Jax nodded. What about his personal devices? Sarah's grin was predatory. We're in. Email, phone, private servers, all compromised. Want to see what Mr. Thorne's been hiding? The information they uncovered was devastating. emails revealing bribes to officials, text messages showing affairs with business partners' wives, financial records indicating money laundering through offshore accounts. Jax released it all, piece by piece, each revelation timed for maximum impact. Social media exploded with hashtags. Hashtag Thorn Crimes, hashtag Cadengate, hashtag Thorn Corruption. Caden's phone rang again. Another business partner pulling out of deals. His hands shook as he poured himself a third scotch. Find out who's behind this, he screamed at his security team. I don't care what it costs. But there was nothing to find. Jax had learned from his years fixing cars. Sometimes the most devastating damage leaves no visible trace. By week's end, Thorn Enterprises' stock had plummeted 60%. Major clients were deserting in droves. The SEC had launched a formal investigation. And that was just the beginning. You're not just breaking him, be observed during one of their meetings. You're dismantling him, piece by piece. He wanted to be the center of attention, Jax replied. I'm just giving him what he wanted. The assault continued relentlessly. Anonymous tips to journalism outlets revealed more scandals. Social media influencers received mysterious files exposing Caden's misdeeds. His country club memberships were quietly revoked. Restaurant reservations vanished. Private jet companies suddenly found their schedules full. Corinne tried to help, reaching out to her marketing contacts. But they too had received evidence, emails showing how she'd sabotaged colleagues, stolen credit for others' work, manipulated her way up the corporate ladder. This is a nightmare, she told Caden one evening, mascara streaking her cheeks. Everything we've built. Caden laughed bitterly. You brought this curse with you when you left that mechanic. Get out. Get out. Jax watched through the surveillance feeds as Corinne fled the mansion in tears. But he felt no satisfaction, no pity. This wasn't about emotions anymore. This was about justice, served cold and precise, like the tools he'd used in his garage. The next morning, he met with Ryland Blake, the private investigator he'd hired. The ex-cops report was thick with damning evidence. They're both dirty, Ryland said. Thorne's been destroying lives his entire career. And your ex-wife? She's left a trail of ruined reputations behind her. Want to know what they said about you in private? No. Jax's voice was firm. That doesn't matter anymore. What matters is what happens next. His next move targeted their social standing. Anonymous donations to charity events were suddenly withdrawn. Invitations to elite gatherings disappeared. Photos emerged showing Caden with known criminals, Corinne in compromising situations. Their world was shrinking, day by day, hour by hour. The mighty Caden Thorne and his trophy wife were becoming pariahs in the very society they tried so desperately to rule. And through it all, Jax worked with the same steady hands that had rebuilt countless engines. Each move calculated, each strike precise, dismantling their lives with the same care he'd once used to restore broken machines. You're going to kill them, Cade warned. No, Jax replied, his voice calm. I'm going to teach them what it means to be nothing. Death would be too easy. Chapter 5. The Turning Tides. The pressure began to show in Caden's appearance first. His perfectly tailored suits hung loose on his frame. Dark circles marked his eyes. His hands trembled slightly as he signed document after document, trying to stem the bleeding of his empire. Sir, his assistant ventured one morning. There's a man here from the bank. Send him away. Caden snapped, but the tremor in his voice betrayed his fear. They're calling in the loans, sir. All of them. Caden slumped in his chair, the reality of his situation finally hitting home. He'd built his empire on borrowed money and borrowed time. Now both were running out. In their bedroom, Corinne packed a suitcase, her movements frantic. We need to leave, she said when Caden entered. Start fresh somewhere else. Leave. Caden grabbed her arm roughly. You think this will stop if we run? Whoever's doing this, they're everywhere. They're in our phones, our computers, our bank accounts. Then fight back. Corinne shouted. You're Caden Thorne. You've destroyed dozens of companies, crushed countless competitors. This is different, Caden whispered, and for the first time, Corinne saw real fear in his eyes. This isn't business. This is personal. Miles away, in his command center, Jax watched their deterioration with detached interest. Sarah Chin approached with a new report. "We found something interesting," she said. "Looks like they're planning to liquidate assets, move money offshore. Want us to stop them?" "No," Jax replied. "Let them try. Sometimes the best trap is the one they walk into themselves." The attempts to transfer money triggered automated alerts in banking systems worldwide. Accounts were frozen. Assets were seized. The net tightened further. Ethan, watching from his new private school, saw the changes in his mother and Caden. The confident power couple was crumbling. He watched news reports about Thorn Enterprises' collapse, read social media posts about his mother's past misdeeds. One evening, he called his father. "Dad." His voice was small, uncertain. "Ethan." Jax's tone remained neutral. Are you doing this? Does it matter?" A long pause. "Mom's scared." Cadence. "He's not the same person anymore." "Neither am I." Jax ended the call, turning back to his screens. The relationship between Caden and Corinne deteriorated rapidly. Their arguments echoed through the mansion, each blaming the other for their downfall. "You brought this curse," Caden shouted during one particularly vicious fight. "Ever since you left that mechanic, everything's gone wrong." "Me?" Corinne laughed hysterically. "You're the one who promised me the world. Some business genius you turned out to be." "Get out." Caden threw a crystal glass against the wall. "Take your bad luck and get out." But Corinne had nowhere to go. Her old contacts wouldn't return her calls. Her professional reputation was in tatters. Banks wouldn't touch her accounts. Jax watched it all, adding pressure where needed, releasing it where it would cause the most damage. He'd learned from years of working with machines. Sometimes you had to let things break themselves. In his garage, which he still visited daily, he worked on a classic Porsche while monitoring their destruction. The rhythmic sound of tools against metal mixed with reports from his team. "Sir," Sarah called. "They're turning on each other." Thorne just tried to transfer the last of his liquid assets to a private account, cutting Corinne out completely. "Let him," Jax replied, adjusting a timing belt. "She'll find out soon enough." The discovery sparked another explosive argument. Corinne, finally realizing she'd been betrayed by both the men in her life, snapped. "You're pathetic," she screamed at Caden. At least Jax was honest about who he was. "You're just a fraud in an expensive suit. And you're a gold-digging whore who destroyed everything she touched." Caden roared back. "Get out. Get out." Corinne fled the mansion with nothing but her designer handbag and the clothes on her back. Her credit cards were declined at hotels. Her so-called friends didn't answer their doors. Finally, desperate, she went to the one place she thought she'd never return to, Rourke's Resurrections. The garage was quiet when she arrived. Jax stood at his workbench, his back to her. "Jax," she said softly. I need help." He turned, and the look in his eyes made her step back. There was nothing there. No anger, no hate, not even satisfaction. Just emptiness. "No," he said simply, and turned back to his work. She fled into the night, finally understanding what she'd thrown away, what she'd destroyed. Meanwhile, Caden made one final desperate attempt to save himself. He called an emergency board meeting, hoping to rally support from his remaining allies. But when he arrived at the conference room, it was empty except for a single laptop on the table. The screen came to life, showing Jax's face. "Hello, Caden," Jax said calmly. "I believe it's time we talked." Caden sank into a chair, his legs no longer able to support him. "You? It was you all along? Did you think you could take my family, mock my life's work, and there wouldn't be consequences?" "I'll give you anything," Caden pleaded. "Money, power, whatever you want." "I don't want anything from you," Jax replied. "I want you to understand what it means to be nothing. And you're almost there." The screen went dark, leaving Caden alone with the ruins of his empire. Chapter 6. The Trap Closes. The final phase of Jax's plan unfolded with the same precision he'd once used to rebuild engines. City inspectors arrived at Caden's mansion, citing anonymous tips about structural issues. "This building isn't safe," the chief inspector declared, showing Caden official-looking documents. "You have 24 hours to vacate the premises." "This is ridiculous." Caden exploded. Do you know who I am? A man who needs to leave this property, the inspector replied coolly. Now, Caden's attempts to fight the order hit a wall of bureaucracy. His lawyers, preoccupied with the SEC investigations and mounting lawsuits, couldn't help. His political connections, scarred by the scandals, wouldn't take his calls. He found Corinne waiting in his driveway, her designer clothes wrinkled, her hair unkempt. They're shutting down the mansion, he said numbly. Where are we supposed to go? She demanded. All the hotels. I know. His voice was hollow. They won't take our reservations. Even under fake names. They spent that night in Caden's Bentley, parked in an upscale shopping center. Security asked them to leave by morning. As they drove aimlessly through Beverly Hills, a text message appeared on both their phones simultaneously. An address, followed by 3 words. A place waiting. The address led them to the outskirts of town, to a rundown house that had seen better days decades ago. The key was under the mat, just as the text had said. Inside, they found basic furnishings, a stocked refrigerator, and a note. Welcome home. This is impossible, Corinne whispered. Looking around the shabby rooms, we can't stay here. But they had no choice. Their accounts were frozen. Credit cards declined. Assets seized. The mighty Caden Thorne and his trophy wife were reduced to living in a house that their former cleaning staff would have sneered at. Each morning, they saw the black car parked down the street. Sometimes Jax was visible behind the wheel, sometimes not. But they knew he was watching, measuring their descent into the very mediocrity they'd once mocked. Caden tried to leave once, to seek help from old business partners. He returned hours later, defeated. They all knew, he said, slumping onto the worn couch. They'd all been told what was coming. No one will touch us. Corinne spent hours trying to salvage her online reputation, but each attempt seemed to make things worse. New revelations appeared. Old misdeeds resurfaced. Her social media accounts were flooded with messages from people she'd wronged in her climb to the top. One night, as they ate microwave dinners on a folding table, Corinne finally broke. Why didn't we see it? She sobbed. All those years, we thought he was just a simple mechanic. Because we were blind, Caden replied, his voice bitter. We saw what we wanted to see. And now, their words were cut off by the smell of smoke. They rushed to the windows to see flames beginning to engulf their car, their last possession of any value. Through the fire's glow, they saw Jax standing across the street, watching. He didn't move, didn't speak, just watched as their final link to their old life burned away. When fire trucks arrived, they found no evidence of arson. Just another unfortunate accident in a string of misfortunes that had befallen the former power couple. Jax drove back to his garage that night, his work nearly complete. The tools of revenge, the lawyers, the hackers, the investigators, had served their purpose. Now he could return to his true tools, the ones that had built his first empire. The smell of oil and metal greeted him as he entered his sanctuary. Here, among the machines he understood so well, he could finally appreciate the perfection of his revenge. He hadn't just destroyed them. He'd made them destroy themselves. Their greed, their arrogance, their belief in their own superiority had been the perfect fuel for their destruction. All he'd had to do was light the match and watch it burn. The next morning, Jax returned to watch their suffering. The black car parked in its usual spot, a silent reminder of his presence. Inside the rundown house, Caden and Corinne's arguments had reached a fever pitch. This is your fault, Corinne screamed, throwing a cheap plate against the wall. You just had to have everything, didn't you? The perfect trophy wife, the perfect story. My fault. Caden's laugh was harsh, bordering on hysterical. You're the one who brought this curse on us. Ever since you left that mechanic? Stop calling him that. Corinne's voice cracked. He's not just a mechanic. He never was. We were too stupid, too arrogant to see it. Outside, Jax watched their breakdown through surveillance cameras he'd installed throughout the house. Each bitter word, each accusation, each moment of despair was recorded, archived, a testament to their fall. Sir, Sarah's voice came through his earpiece. The final financial reports are in. Thorne Enterprises is officially bankrupt. The SEC investigation has expanded to include criminal charges. And Corinne's accounts? All seized. Her attempt to access offshore funds triggered the flags we planted. She's completely cut off. Jax nodded, satisfaction coursing through him. Not the hot pleasure of quick revenge, but the cold certainty of justice served. He had dismantled their empire piece by piece, stripped away their illusions of superiority, reduced them to the nothing they'd once accused him of being. Inside the house, Caden stared out the window at the black car. His once immaculate appearance had deteriorated completely. His designer stubble had become an unkempt beard, his bespoke suits replaced by department store clothes. "He's out there again," he muttered. "Always watching. Always." "Stop it," Corinne snapped. "You're becoming paranoid." "Paranoid?" Caden whirled on her. "He destroyed everything. My company, my reputation, my life. And you let him write to us." Their argument was interrupted by another text message, simultaneously arriving on both their phones. A video file. When they opened it, they saw themselves, recorded from multiple angles, their worst moments over the past weeks played back in high definition. "Oh God," Corinne whispered, watching their descent into chaos. "He's been recording everything?" "Of course I have." Jax's voice came through their phones. "Someone had to document your fall. Consider it a lesson in humility." The phones went dead. When they tried to restart them, nothing worked. Their last connection to the outside world was gone. In his car, Jax prepared for the final act of his revenge. The gasoline can sat heavy in his trunk, its purpose clear. He wasn't just going to take their home. He was going to make them watch as he burned away their last illusion of safety. As night fell, he made his move. The gasoline splashed across the worn wooden porch, the peeling paint, the crumbling steps. He could see them through the windows, their faces illuminated by the weak living room light, unaware of what was coming. The match flared bright in the darkness. Jax watched as the flames spread, quick and hungry. He heard their screams of terror, saw them rush to gather what little they had left. But it didn't matter. Everything they'd owned, everything they'd been, was already ash. They emerged from the burning house coughing, clutching each other in fear. Their eyes found him, standing by his car, his face illuminated by the inferno. "Why?" Corinne choked out. "Haven't we lost enough?" "No," Jax replied, his voice carrying clearly over the roar of the flames. "You haven't lost everything yet, but you will." He got into his car and drove away, leaving them to watch their last refuge burn to the ground. Emergency services would find no evidence of arson, just as they'd found nothing to connect him to any of their misfortunes. The final piece of his revenge was complete. He had reduced them to exactly what they'd once believed him to be: nothing. No home, no money, no power, no dignity. Just two broken people standing in the ruins of their arrogance. Act 2 of their destruction was complete. Jax had orchestrated their fall with the same precision he'd once used to rebuild engines, each piece of their downfall carefully planned and executed. They had learned the true cost of underestimating a man they dismissed as just a mechanic. Chapter 7. Echoes of the Past. The garage of Rourke's Resurrections buzzed with activity as Jax worked beneath the hood of a 1957 Chevrolet, his hands moving through the engine components. The familiar sounds and smells of his workshop grounded him, a reminder of who he truly was beneath the ruthless exterior he'd shown to Caden and Corinne. "Pass me the torque wrench," he called to his apprentice, a young man named Mike whom he'd hired from the local technical school. The boy reminded him of himself at that age, hungry to learn, eager to prove himself. "Here, Mr. Rourke," Mike handed over the tool. "That distributor giving you trouble?" Jax grunted in response, focusing on the task at hand. The work kept his mind sharp, his thoughts clear. He'd accomplished what he set out to do. Caden and Corinne were broken, their empire reduced to ash. But the victory brought no joy, only a cold satisfaction. The bell above the garage door chimed. Jax didn't look up, assuming it was another customer, until a familiar voice broke the silence. "Dad." Jax's hands stilled on the engine. He straightened slowly, wiping his hands on a shop rag as he turned to face his son. Ethan stood in the doorway, looking smaller somehow without his designer clothes and practiced arrogance. "Mike," Jax said quietly, "take your lunch break." The apprentice nodded and hurried out, leaving father and son alone among the tools and machines. You look different, Ethan said, shifting uncomfortably. Do I? Jax's voice remained neutral. Or are you just seeing me clearly for the first time? I saw what you did. To Mom. To Caden. Ethan swallowed hard. The house, the fire. And it was terrifying. Brilliant, but terrifying. Ethan met his father's eyes. I never knew you had it in you. All these years, I thought. You thought I was weak, Jax finished. A nobody. Just a grease monkey beneath your notice. I was wrong. The words tumbled out. So wrong. Mom kept telling me how much better we'd be with Caden, how he was everything you weren't. But she was the one who didn't understand. You're not just a mechanic. You're a force of nature. Jax turned back to the Chevrolet, adjusting a valve. I'm exactly what I've always been, Ethan. A man who fixes broken things. The only difference is what I chose to fix, and what I chose to break. I want to apologize, Ethan said, his voice cracking. What I said that day. I was stupid and arrogant and… Save it. Jax's tone cut through the air like a blade. Words are cheap. Actions matter. You want forgiveness? Earn it. How? Jax pointed to a workbench laden with tools. Start by learning. Not just about cars, but about life. About consequences. About what it means to build something with your own hands instead of taking what others have built. Ethan approached the bench hesitantly. You'd teach me? After everything? I'm not a forgiving man, Ethan. Your mother and Caden learned that the hard way. Jax picked up a wrench. But you're my son. The choice is yours. Learn and grow, or leave and never come back. Ethan picked up a socket wrench, testing its weight in his hand. I want to learn. Everything. Not just about cars, but about being a man. Like you. Like me. Jax laughed, but there was no humor in it. Be careful what you wish for. The man you see now isn't gentle or kind. I've destroyed lives, burned down empires, but you did it for justice, Ethan insisted. They betrayed you, hurt you. No. Jax's voice was sharp. I did it because they needed to learn that actions have consequences. That treating people like they're beneath you, like they're nothing, comes at a price. It wasn't about justice. It was about power and how you use it. He moved to another workbench, pulling out diagrams and manuals. You want to learn? Start with the basics. Everything has a foundation. Skip it, try to take shortcuts, and the whole thing falls apart. For the next several hours, Jax guided Ethan through basic engine maintenance, watching as his son struggled with concepts he'd once dismissed as beneath him. The boy's designer clothes became streaked with grease. His manicured hands grew dirty and scraped. It's harder than it looks, Ethan admitted, fumbling with a spark plug. Life usually is. Jax corrected his grip. That's the first lesson. Nothing worthwhile comes easy, and respect has to be earned. As they worked, Jax noticed subtle changes in his son's demeanor. The entitled arrogance faded, replaced by genuine curiosity and determination. It reminded him of himself at that age, before money and power had complicated everything. Dad, Ethan asked as they cleaned up for the day. What happened to Mom and Caden after the fire? They survived, Jax replied coldly. Beyond that, I don't care. They made their choices. Now they live with the consequences. And us? What happens now? Jax surveyed his garage, his sanctuary, the place where he'd always been most true to himself. Now we build something new, something real. But understand this, I'm not the father you knew before. That man died the day you and your mother walked out. I'm something else now, something stronger, Ethan said quietly. Something colder, Jax corrected. Remember that before you decide to stay. Chapter 8. The Unburdened Heart. The transformation of Rourke's Resurrections began immediately. Jax expanded the garage, adding a training center for aspiring mechanics. The scents of oil and metal mixed with the sounds of learning as he poured his knowledge, and his newfound wealth, into creating opportunities for others. This goes beyond basic repairs, he explained to his growing team of instructors. We're not just fixing cars. We're building futures. His charitable foundation, Resurrecting Hope, grew alongside the garage. Jax approached philanthropy with the same precision he'd used to destroy Caden's empire, but this time his target was poverty and lack of opportunity. The scholarship program launches next month, B reported during one of their meetings. 20 students from underprivileged backgrounds, full ride through technical school. Make it 40, Jax replied, reviewing the proposals. And add living expenses. I know what it's like to try learning a trade while worrying about survival. Cade, who handled the foundation's finances, whistled at the numbers. You're going to make a real difference in these kids' lives, Jax.
No.
Jax's voice was firm. They'll make the difference themselves. I'm just providing tools. Like any mechanic would. The foundation's work attracted attention, but Jax stayed out of the spotlight. He preferred the garage, teaching alongside his regular work. Ethan remained by his side, learning not just about engines, but about the value of hard work and integrity. Why this car? Ethan asked one day, watching his father work on an old Ford pickup. We have million-dollar supercars in the lot, but you always come back to these classics. Because they're honest, Jax replied, adjusting the timing belt. No computers, no fancy electronics. Just pure mechanics. When something's wrong, you can feel it, see it, fix it with your hands. Like people? Jax paused, considering. Sometimes. But people are more complicated. They hide their damage better. The garage door opened, admitting a familiar face. Ryland Blake, the private investigator who'd helped uncover Caden and Curran's secrets, stepped inside. Thought you'd want to know, Ryland said without preamble. They've left the country. Australia. Looks like. Small town where nobody knows them. Good. Jax didn't look up from his work. Let them stay there. They're broken, Jax, Ryland continued. Completely. Living in a rental, working minimum wage jobs. Caden's at a car wash, if you can believe it. A cold smile crossed Jax's face. Fitting. Now he knows what it's like to be looked down on. And Mom? Ethan asked quietly. Waitressing. They barely speak to each other anymore. Ryland glanced at Jax. Want me to keep tabs on them?
No.
Jax straightened, wiping his hands. They're nothing now. Let them live with that. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of a group of students from the Foundation's training program. Jax watched as they filed in, eager to learn, hungry for opportunity. This is what matters now, he told Ethan. Building something real. Something that lasts. Over the following weeks, Jax expanded his vision further. The Foundation opened halfway houses for troubled youth, focusing on teaching them trades. The garage became a beacon of hope in the community. You've changed, B observed during one of their regular meetings. Not softened. You're still the same ruthless bastard who destroyed Caden. But you're channeling it differently. I'm still destroying things, Jax replied. Just different things now. Poverty. Hopelessness. The idea that someone's worth is measured by their bank account. And Ethan? How's that going? Jax glanced through the office window at his son, now confidently teaching a group of students about engine diagnostics. He's learning. About more than just cars. He's learning from you, B pointed out. The good and the bad. There's no good and bad, Jax countered. There's just power and how you use it. I used mine for revenge. Now I'm using it for something else. But make no mistake, I'm still the same man who burned down that house. The Foundation's success brought unwanted attention. Reporters tried to dig into Jax's past to uncover the source of his wealth. But he'd learned from destroying Caden. All trails led nowhere. All investigations hit dead ends. They're calling you the mechanic millionaire, Cade said, showing him a newspaper article. Local mystery man changing lives. Let them speculate. Jax returned to his work. What matters is results. In the garage, those results were visible daily. Students learned, cars were restored, lives were rebuilt. Jax maintained his exacting standards, demanding excellence from everyone who passed through his doors. You're strict, Ethan commented, watching his father drill a student on proper torque specifications. Life is strict, Jax replied. Make a mistake here, you damage an engine. Make a mistake out there. He gestured to the world beyond the garage. You damage lives. Like your mother and Caden did. Chapter 9. The Legacy of the Wrench. The legend of Jackson Rourke grew, though few knew the full truth. To the public, he was the mysterious benefactor, the skilled mechanic who'd made a fortune and chose to give back. Only a select few knew about the destruction he'd wrought, the lives he'd ruined in his quest for revenge. Another graduate program completed, be announced, reviewing the foundation's latest results. 98% employment rate. Not enough, Jax replied, his standards as exacting in charity as they were in mechanics. Make it 100%. Find out why those 2% failed and fix it. His ruthlessness, once directed at destroying Caden and Corinne, now drove him to perfect his philanthropic machine. Each program was analyzed, improved, refined until it ran as smoothly as the engines he restored. In the garage, he maintained his hands-on approach. Students learned not just technical skills but life lessons, delivered in Jax's uncompromising style. You think this is just about cars? He asked one struggling student. This is about pride, about doing things right, about never letting anyone tell you you're not good enough. Ethan, watching his father work, had grown into a different person. Gone was the entitled teenager who'd scorned his father's profession. In his place stood a young man who understood the value of hard work and the weight of consequences. I found this, Ethan said one evening, holding up an old photograph he'd discovered in the office. It showed Corinne and Caden in their prime, at some charity gala. Should I throw it away? Jax took the photo, studied it briefly. Keep it, as a reminder of what they did to you, of what happens when you measure people by their bank accounts instead of their character. Jax handed the photo back. They thought money made them better than everyone else. Now they have nothing. That's the real lesson. The garage continued to evolve, becoming more than just a business or a training center. It became a symbol of transformation, of the power of skill and determination over mere wealth. You've built something remarkable, Kate observed during a rare quiet moment. Though I have to admit, watching you teach these kids, it's a far cry from watching you destroy Caden's empire. Is it? Jax raised an eyebrow. I'm still destroying things. Destroying ignorance. Destroying the barriers that keep people down. The tools are different, but the precision is the same. His reputation grew beyond the automotive world. Other businesses sought his advice, but Jax remained focused on his core mission. The garage and the foundation were enough. One day, a sleek car pulled up outside the garage. A well-dressed man emerged, one of Caden's former business partners. Mr. Rourke, the man began. I have a business proposition. No. Jax didn't look up from the engine he was working on. You haven't heard what I'm offering. I don't need to. Jax's voice was cold. I know your type. You worked with Caden Thorne. That tells me everything I need to know. The man persisted. The past is the past. This could be very profitable. Jax straightened, fixing the man with the same merciless stare that had watched Caden's mansion burn. The past is never past. It just teaches us who people really are. Get out of my garage. The man left hurriedly, leaving Jax to return to his work. Ethan, who'd witnessed the exchange, approached his father. You could have heard him out, he suggested. No. Jax picked up a wrench. Some people don't change, they just find new ways to be the same person. Your mother and Caden taught me that. The foundation's work continued to expand, but Jax maintained his connection to the garage. It remained his sanctuary, the place where he felt most himself. You know what I've learned? Ethan asked one evening as they closed up shop. Real power isn't in money or status. It's in being able to sleep at night knowing you've done things right. Jax looked at his son, seeing the man he'd become. Took you long enough to figure that out. I had a good teacher. Ethan smiled. A ruthless one, but good. They stood together in the garage, surrounded by the tools and machines that had been both witnesses and instruments of their journey. The scent of oil and metal hung in the air, familiar and comforting. Dad, Ethan said quietly, are you happy? Jax considered the question, thinking of all that had happened. The betrayal, the revenge, the rebuilding. Happy isn't the word, he replied finally. I'm satisfied. There's a difference. He picked up a wrench, the tool that had started it all. In his hands, it was both a symbol of his past and an instrument of his future. The man who had been dismissed as nothing had become everything, not through wealth or status, but through the strength of his will and the precision of his vengeance. The garage would remain his legacy, not just as a place where machines were fixed, but as a testament to the power of transformation. The man who had orchestrated the perfect revenge had found an even better purpose, forging new paths for others while never forgetting the steel in his soul that had made it all possible. Success isn't about the money, he told his students during their graduation ceremony. It's about building something that lasts, something real. The foundation continued to grow, spreading across the country. But Jax remained rooted in his garage, hands dirty with grease, mind clear with purpose. He had become a legend in two worlds, the ruthless avenger who had destroyed a corporate titan, and the skilled craftsman who gave others a chance at a better life. Ethan stayed by his side, learning not just the mechanics of engines but the mechanics of life. The entitled boy who had once sneered at his father's profession had become a man who understood the true value of work, integrity, and consequences. "You never told me," Ethan said one day as they worked on a classic Mustang together. "Did you feel anything when you watched their house burn?" Jax's hands didn't pause in their work. "Satisfaction," he replied honestly. "Not pleasure. Just the satisfaction of knowing that justice had been served, that they finally understood what it meant to be nothing." The garage remained his sanctuary, but it was different now. The tools that had once been his only companions were now instruments of teaching, of building, of creating something beyond revenge. In Australia, Caden and Corinne lived their small, insignificant lives, their dreams of power and status reduced to memories. They had learned the hardest lesson of all, that the mighty could fall, and that a man they had dismissed as nothing could reduce them to less than nothing. But Jax never looked back. His focus remained on the future, on the lives he could change, on the skills he could pass on. The wrench in his hand was no longer just a tool. It was a symbol of transformation, of power used wisely, of strength tempered by purpose. "The thing about engines," he told his last class of the day, "is that they don't care who you are or where you came from. They only care about what you can do." That's the real lesson here. Not just fixing cars, but fixing lives. Building something that matters. As the sun set on another day at Rourke's Resurrections, Jax stood in his garage, surrounded by the tools and machines that had been his constant companions. The scent of oil and metal filled the air, as familiar as breath. He picked up a wrench, feeling its weight, remembering all it represented. He was still the same man who had orchestrated a perfect revenge, who had burned down an empire. But now he built instead of destroyed, created instead of demolished. The cold steel in his soul remained, tempered but never softened, a reminder of who he was and what he could do. The legend of Jackson Rourke, the mechanic who became an avenger and then a builder of futures, would live on. Not in the ashes of what he had destroyed, but in the lives he had helped to build, in the skills he had passed on, in the lessons he had taught about power and its price. And in his garage, among the engines and tools, he had found not just peace, but purpose. The wrench in his hand was both a tool and a testament to what he had been, what he had become, and what he would always be. A man who understood that true power lay not in wealth or status, but in the ability to rebuild what was broken, to create something lasting from the ruins of the past. That was his true legacy, not the revenge he had taken, but the lives he had changed. The mechanic had become something more. A builder of futures, a forger of paths, a man who had turned his pain into purpose and his vengeance into vision. And in the end, that was enough. More than enough. It was everything. Epilogue. 10 years later. The empire that Jackson Rourke built from the ashes of his revenge had grown beyond anyone's expectations. Rourke's Resurrections was no longer just a single garage in his hometown. It had expanded into a nationwide network of training centers, each maintaining the exacting standards their founder had established. At 52, Jax hadn't lost any of his edge. His hair might have grayed at the temples, but his hands remained steady, his mind sharp, and his standards uncompromising. He still spent most days in the original garage, now expanded into a state-of-the-art facility that served as both working shop and training headquarters. "These tolerances are off," he told a senior instructor, examining an engine rebuild. "If our students can't maintain, they don't graduate. Period." The instructor nodded, knowing better than to argue. Jax's reputation had only grown over the years. The story of how he'd systematically destroyed Caden Thorne's empire had become something of an urban legend in business circles, though few knew the full truth. Ethan, now 26, had grown into a formidable presence himself. He managed the business side of Rourke's Resurrections, but like his father, he never lost touch with the work that built their legacy. His hands still got dirty regularly, and he personally supervised the training programs. Latest placement numbers, he said, entering his father's office with a tablet. 100% employment rate for the third year running. The waiting list for our program is over 2,000 deep. Jax grunted, not looking up from the engine diagram he was studying. How many scholarships are we funding? 500 per year, spread across 20 locations. The Foundation's new endowment can handle double that. If you want to expand, do it. Jax finally looked up. And contact those 2 graduates from last year's program, the ones who wanted to open their own shop. Tell them we'll back them. The Resurrecting Hope Foundation had become one of the largest private charitable organizations in the country, though Jax kept his name out of the spotlight. Its focus remained unchanged, providing opportunities for those willing to work for them. Kate O'Connell, now semi-retired but still managing the foundation's investments, marveled at what his friend had built. You know, when you first told me about those bitcoins, I never imagined this, he said during one of his visits. Neither did I, Jax admitted, leading him through the training facility. But revenge teaches you things about power, about how to use it. The Foundation's reach extended far beyond automotive training. It now included programs in all skilled trades, scholarships for technical education, and support for small business startups. But Jax maintained strict control over its direction, ensuring it never lost its core mission. Beatrix Hayes, though well past typical retirement age, continued to serve on the Foundation's board. Her legal expertise had helped shape its structure, ensuring Jax's vision would survive long past his time. You've built something remarkable, she told him during a board meeting. Though I have to admit, watching you mentor these kids, it's a far cry from the man who came to my office wanting scorched earth divorce. Is it? Jax raised an eyebrow. I'm still just fixing what's broken. The tools are different, that's all. The years had done nothing to soften his edge. Those who knew him best understood that beneath his philanthropic work lay the same steel that had orchestrated Caden Thorne's downfall. He never forgot, never truly forgave. Ryland Blake, the investigator who'd helped uncover Caden and Corinne's secrets, still sent occasional updates about their lives in Australia. They remained in their small town, their grand dreams reduced to dust. Caden had eventually managed to buy the car wash where he'd started working, while Corinne had risen to restaurant manager. They lived separate lives now, bound only by their shared humiliation. They asked about you again, Ryland reported during one of his visits. Wanted to know if you'd consider letting them return. No. Jax's response was immediate and final. They made their choice. Let them live with it. The original garage had become something of a pilgrimage site for aspiring mechanics. They came from across the country, hoping to learn from the legendary Jackson Rourke. Most left disappointed. Jax only taught those he deemed worthy, those who showed the same dedication to excellence he demanded of himself. You're too harsh with them, Sarah Chun, still heading his cybersecurity team, commented after watching him dismiss a potential student. No, Jax replied, cleaning a carburetor. I'm exactly as harsh as they need. This isn't about making people feel good. It's about excellence. His team had stayed remarkably stable over the years. Those who worked for Jackson Rourke tended to stay, drawn by his unwavering standards and the satisfaction of being part of something meaningful. Even Mike, his first apprentice from the early days, now ran one of the training centers. Tell me something, Ethan asked his father one evening as they closed up the garage. Do you ever regret any of it? What you did to Mom and Caden? Jax considered the question, wiping his hands on a shop rack. No, he said finally. They thought power came from money, from status. They needed to learn differently. And me? Do you regret giving me a second chance? You earned it, Jax replied. That's the difference. You learned. They never did. The garage remained his sanctuary, but it had evolved. The tools and machines were still there, but now they were instruments of transformation rather than just repair. Each engine rebuilt, each student trained, was part of a larger mission. One day, a familiar face appeared at the garage door. Tommy, the young apprentice who'd been there the day Corinne left. He'd gone on to build his own successful business and now wanted his son to learn from Jax. "I remember that day," Tommy said quietly, "when Mrs. Rourke left. None of us knew what you were capable of then." "Nobody did," Jax replied, examining the boy's application. "Including me." The application joined hundreds of others, each carefully vetted. Jax's programs weren't just about technical skills, they were about building character, instilling the same iron discipline that had allowed him to orchestrate his perfect revenge and then build something meaningful from its ashes. The Foundation's annual graduation ceremony had become a major event in the industry. Companies competed for Rourke graduates, knowing they represented the highest standards in their fields. Jax attended each ceremony but never spoke, preferring to watch from the background as Ethan handled the public duties. "You should say something," Ethan urged during the latest ceremony. "They want to hear from you." "They don't need to hear from me," Jax replied. "They need to learn what I learned. That true power comes from what you can do, not what you have." His empire had grown beyond anything Caden Thorne had ever achieved, but Jax remained unchanged at his core. The same precision that had guided his revenge now directed his philanthropy. The same unforgiving standards that had driven him to destroy his enemies now pushed his students to excellence. One morning, a letter arrived from Australia. Corinne, writing after all these years, begging forgiveness, asking to see her son. Jax read it once, then handed it to Ethan without comment. "Do you want me to respond?" Ethan asked, scanning the desperate words. "Your choice," Jax replied. "You're not a kid anymore. But remember, some choices can't be unmade." Ethan studied the letter for a long moment before feeding it through the shredder. "She made her choice 10 years ago. Like you taught me, actions have consequences." The lesson hadn't been lost on the younger generation of Rourkes. Ethan had married a practical woman, a mechanical engineer he'd met through the Foundation's programs. Their children were being raised with the same values that had built their grandfather's legacy: hard work, excellence, and the understanding that respect had to be earned. "Grandpa," Ethan's 6-year-old daughter asked one day, watching Jax work on a classic car, "why do you like fixing things so much?" Jax paused, looking at his granddaughter. "Because broken things teach us about ourselves," he replied. "About what we can build, what we can fix, and what we need to leave broken." The years had brought perspective, but no regret. His revenge had been complete, his transformation profound, but the steel in his soul remained unbent. The empire he'd built wasn't just about fixing cars or training mechanics. It was about proving that true power came from skill, determination, and the willingness to act. Cade sometimes joked that Jax had become what Caden Thorne had only pretended to be: a true force for change, a builder of futures. But unlike Caden, Jax never lost touch with who he was at his core. The tools and machines in his garage remained his truest companions, the work of his hands his greatest satisfaction. The legend of Jackson Rourke had evolved. To the public, he was the mysterious philanthropist who changed lives through his foundation. To his students, he was the demanding mentor who accepted nothing less than excellence. To those who knew the whole story, he was living proof that revenge, properly executed, could forge something lasting. "You know what I've realized?" Ethan said one evening, watching his father teach his granddaughter how to use a wrench properly. "Everything you did, the revenge, the foundation, all of it, was about building things. Even when you were destroying Caden's empire, you were building something else." "Everything's connected," Jax replied, guiding the child's hands. "Breaking and building, revenge and creation, power and purpose. The trick is knowing which is which." The empire he'd built would outlast him. The training centers, the foundation, the legacy of excellence and uncompromising standards. But his true monument wasn't in the buildings or programs. It was in the lives changed, the lessons taught, the understanding that true power came not from wealth or status, but from the ability to build something meaningful from whatever life gave you. In his garage, among his tools and machines, Jackson Rourke had found more than revenge or redemption. He'd found his true purpose, not just fixing what was broken, but building something that would last. The wrench in his hand was still both tool and testament, but now it built futures instead of destroying them. And that, perhaps, was his greatest revenge of all. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.